One thing that we can definitely say about Web3 as compared to Web2 is that it may bring a lot of changes, but there are some things that are just never going to change. People still need to be engaged. They still need to be excited. And in most cases today, they need a sense of psychological ownership. Now, you might not have heard that term before, but it is a critical idea for understanding how to get people into Web3 and more specifically, how to get them excited about your project. So today, we're going to be talking about what psychological ownership is and 3 highly effective ways to build that feeling into your own customers and prospects. My name is Trent Kennelly. I'm a Web3 marketing strategist, and this is the best place for you to learn about Web3, NFTs, AI, and how to market it all. So if that sounds good to you and you're excited, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, comment to let me know how you're thinking about building ownership into your own project. If you haven't considered this before, what you're now thinking about after this video, I would love to know, and let's get started. Okay, so what is this high-minded thing called psychological ownership that we need to be implementing? What is it and why is it important here? This is the feeling or sense of ownership with something. A good example is a social media profile. So you don't call it Meta's Instagram featuring Bayashi. It's Bayashi's Instagram. Bayashi has a sense of ownership over his own Instagram, and chances are you do too over your own Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever it is. All right, so simple enough, right? Psychological ownership, a feeling of owning something, we get it, but it might have you thinking, yes, but Trent, psychological ownership is basically baked into Web3. Why are we talking about this? And I can understand why you might think that. I mean, Web3 is based on the blockchain, which largely operates via cryptocurrency. So how can you get closer to ownership than actually owning crypto? But I think that this is where caution is really important, because at the end of the day, ownership and psychological ownership are not the same thing. Ownership is a fact and psychological ownership is a feeling. And the vast majority of Web3 projects, believe it or not, fall victim to this problem because they all think that offering a cryptocurrency as part of the offering to be involved on the platform is enough, and they can just kind of wash their hands of the situation and move on. Just, okay, well, that's all it takes to get people in the door. Let's just offer to pay them and, we're done. But at the end of the day, all that is a transaction, right? It doesn't actually drive that same emotional attachment. And let's be honest, Meta didn't build some of the biggest social media properties in the world by simply paying users off. They used engagement principles that kept people coming back and made them feel like a part of the project over and over again. So obviously we want to build this feeling of psychological ownership into our users since it's such a huge driver of continued use and growth. But if giving users a piece of the pie through crypto isn't enough to give them a feeling of psychological ownership, what does it take to drive that growth? There are a lot of things that we could talk about here, probably hundreds, but I'd like to just kind of go through a few big ones to just kind of get the wheels moving here. And I want to start with time sink. So the idea here comes from the fallacy of time sink, where people believe that because they've spent a lot of time on something, they need to keep going and spending more time on it to just finish it, no matter what it is, okay? The idea behind this is a little bit darker than what we want to talk about, but time sink fallacy is just saying, well, I've already wasted 3 years on my degree, but I know I don't want to be a lawyer. I'll just finish out the last 2 semesters and then I'll go do something else with my life. But if you're not going to be a lawyer, is it really worth your time, right? That's the question we're trying to ask. So we're going to take that negative question and we're going to make it a positive question. We're going to flip it on its ear real quick. You want people to continue their involvement because they're investing time into the project. But more importantly, you want to ensure that they're doing so out of a feeling of desire and not out of necessity or pressure or let's just finish it off, right? Whereas in time sink, you're continuing involvement because you feel pressure not to let up. Here, you're driving involvement from a deeper state of emotional excitement. So how do you do that? Well, let's look at social media again. Let's talk about TikTok. This is probably the best place to look for your answer here. TikTok, as you know, is one of the most viral and controversial social media sites to ever exist. And TikTok drives that engagement first by serving the exact videos that the user wants to see. So when someone joins the platform, they're going to immediately see something, probably a dancing video. And every choice that this user makes on the platform, anything that they do, from skipping to the next one before the end, pausing the video, watching it more than once, subscribing, looking at the comments, commenting, Anything that you do informs TikTok about which video to try next. It's going to say, okay, this person showed more or less interest in the topic. Let's try this or that. And within a few hours of scrolling, the information that it has about you just from these videos, just from what you have watched, is pretty immense. So that's phase one, draw people in by engaging them. But that alone does not drive the kind of engagement that would lead to this time sink that we're looking for. The next step is to make it really easy for the new user to get involved and get that dopamine hit for themselves, which is why they make it possible on TikTok to use other people's sounds, to stitch and comment on other videos, to edit inside the app, to build the exact video that you want. And the first video that you put out is almost always going to be a hit, because if they can get you invested in chasing that high from the very first moment, they've got you for a long time, okay? And if you use this model, you can really bolt it down to these two big steps. Draw people in with something highly engaging, then drive them to take action by making it really easy to take part. Another important way to build psychological ownership is control. And I mean, that's kind of the whole idea here, right? The whole point of Web3 really boils down to control. What is a blockchain except a decentralized way to live your life? Decentralized currency leads to decentralized apps, leads to decentralized unique digital items. And it's all about decentralized things, which are all about having control over your own stuff, right? Over your own digital assets, over your own data, right? Decentralization allows that control to be stronger for the individual owner. So if Web3 users of your Web3 offering don't feel in control, then honestly, you've kind of missed the point here. But how do you give that control? Well, one of the most direct ways, as I've already kind of mentioned, is to create a crypto and let the users get a piece, right? And that can be a great thing, but there are downsides to it as well. So let's kind of dig into this a little bit deeper. So on the surface, when you're providing a crypto that's only gainable through your app or your service, whatever, you're providing liquidity to the user. So you're saying, users, there are 5 million, 10 million ownership shares, crypto pieces in this company, and I want you to have some of it just for being involved. So then you set up benchmarks for what actions drive what results, and people get to control how much they want to be involved, how much they really want that ownership stake. But if you decide to implement this and only this, you're only going to say, I'm giving people money for interaction, you start to see the same problem that companies face when motivating employees. You start to see that money is good, but it has its limits. This has been known for a very long time in employment circles. You cannot keep someone engaged just by paying them a lot of money and only paying them a lot of money with no other benefits. You need to take other actions to build that engagement and drive that feeling of empowerment as well, which means the question is, what does that look like? Well, let's just look at building a website. So what do you need to build a website? In the most basic form, you need hosting, a domain, and a website builder. You could buy that domain from GoDaddy, from Namecheap, Google Domains, or 1,000 other places, right? And you can get that server space from Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, SiteGround, again, a million other places. And you can use Squarespace or Wix or Elementor or whatever to build that website as well. And once you have all of that, you can build literally whatever you want. You have ultimate control. But let's return to that question of ownership versus psychological ownership, right? Because we have to ask, do you own your website? And that gets a little trickier because you might have spent thousands to acquire your domain, and you might have spent millions to build the website the way you want, but you still got to pay $30 to hold the domain every year. And if you don't renew it, someone else is going to come and snap it up and hold your entire business hostage, right? So do you own it? Maybe and maybe not. But does the level of control that you have to create the exact site that you want give you a feeling of psychological ownership? No question. Now, I made that sound like the biggest and most complicated thing in the world, right? Just make your app like website building. Super easy. But there are simpler ways that we can instill that same feeling of control. So Mastodon is a great role model here because they separate out their servers for particular niches, which makes it much easier for the user to maintain control over the content that they're seeing, okay? So it also makes it harder for advertisers that are not applicable to serve their ads to somebody because it doesn't make any sense for them. It drives specific interest and content to those specific users rather than allowing for what happens now on Meta and a bunch of other sites where advertisers can just slap some paint on the wall and see what sticks and then kind of make decisions from there, right? So I don't want to be a grandmother getting advertisements for NFTs because there's no product market fit there. It doesn't make any sense, and that doesn't happen on Mastodon. And finally, let's talk about brand to identity alignment. So users tend to gravitate towards brands or products that reflect their own values and their own identity, which is why you've seen a lot of political involvement from companies in the most recent years. Like, for example, the Colin Kaepernick ad from Nike from, I don't know how long ago, a couple years ago, that really stirred up a lot of discussion, but it was a political stand. And this is why I'm always saying that people in this space need to know that you're in the game too and not just there for a quick buck. It is very important in Web3 spaces that users know that they can trust you because you're here for the right reasons. So how do you build this alignment? It's really just a question of exposure. The more people that can see that you're in this space for the right reasons, the more they're going to believe and then trust you. You can think podcasts, guest blogs, the copy you use on your website, showing up on other people's YouTube channels. It's all about keeping that consistency in your message about why you're here. If they believe that, then they're going to feel more psychological ownership over your project because of the trust that they hold for the people behind it. So there you go. That's psychological ownership, which is a huge opportunity. And if you aren't building it into your project, you could be missing out on some amazing opportunities. So let me know how you're thinking about building ownership into your own project. I would love to be able to help you out. Otherwise, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, and I will catch you in the next one.